Juanita, let's talk about how the older generation, what they did when they were going to have a baby. How were babies delivered back in the early days, and what time period are we talking about?
Well, it was 1922, I can say, for me, because that's when I was born. And excuse me, and my mother had a midwife, and the midwife is one who delivers babies. And her name was Lottie Walker, but I call her Grandma Walker, and we all call her Grandma Walker until she passed on. And then, of course, she delivered me, and then she delivered my baby in 1939. So this is all that we had here in this area was midwives. I knew of two, but it was another one from the sawmill or turpentine area. I think her name was Brown, but I'm not sure. But Miss Posey, Grandma Walker, those were the ones that I knew lived in this area, and they delivered babies all anytime, day or night. We didn't know what doctors were at that time, as far as midwives were concerned. I mean, as far as babies were concerned.
Okay. Now, when a woman's time came to deliver a baby, how would she get in touch with the midwife?
Excuse me. Usually somebody, a husband or some family member would run and get her, because we didn't have telephones at that time.
Okay. Now, were these midwives licensed, or?
As far as I know, yes. Okay. They had to have some kind of a training, but I don't know what kind, because we didn't ask for anything like that. We just knew that was a midwife.
Right. And were they paid a salary? Were they paid for
the person, when they delivered the baby, you'd pay them so much. And I don't know what that amount was, but we paid them.
It was probably a lot cheaper than it's having a baby today.
Yes, much cheaper.
Okay. Let's talk about some other things that happened in the community. For instance, when you were younger, here in the area, what did it look like in Mims?
Oh, it was nothing but sand. We didn't know what streets were. We didn't have no streets at that time. Sand and bushes. If you went somewhere, you just had a path, because we used to have a path from our house to go wherever we needed to go. And we didn't have lights. We didn't have radios. We didn't have any of these modern things that we have now. When I was growing up. That's what we did. We did a lot of playing as children. And of course, as I said in the other report, my mother loved cows. So, and we had a lot of cows and hogs and pigs and chickens and things like that. She made sure we had something to eat.
And you had garden vegetables?
Yes, we didn't do too much planting, but we did have a little bit of it there. But the neighbors had a lot of gardening, and they would always share. She would share the milk and the butter and stuff with them. They would share their gardening stuff with her.
And that's back when neighbors were neighbors.
Yes, and you didn't even have to lock your doors. You didn't have to, because we didn't know what it was for electricity. So you can just sleep with your windows open and your doors open, and everybody looked out for everybody. And we didn't have a lot of this going on now.
We had talked before about Mr. Crandall Warren. He was a wonderful, steadfast community leader. What were some of his accomplishments in the community? What was he responsible for in part?
Well, I can't say he was responsible, but he took the responsibility. Working with Mr. Moore within the ACP, because I worked with them also when I came back home. And going to different meetings. I traveled with him a lot of times to different meetings so that we could get grants or get monies to get roads paved, lights, water, because we didn't even have pump water. That's the only thing we had at that time. We didn't have anything that would like we have now. So Crandall worked very diligently with all of those things.
And you also did?
Yes, I worked with him.
Okay, and where would you go to get some of this support?
We had to go to most times to other areas, like in Cocoa or Titusville, to meetings, because very few meetings, if any, were held out here in Mims.
I see. So you went to the county commissioners?
Well, they had certain places they would have the meetings.
I see.
And yes, we'd go to the county commissioners when that time came available.
So when were the streets paved in Mims?
Oh goodness, I can't remember the year, but it's been quite a while now. But when I was growing up, we didn't have them. But I don't remember the year. It's been quite, because they were paved before Crandall passed.
Okay, so would you say they were paved like maybe in the 60s or the 70s?
That sounds like it may be a good time, but I can't remember the times.
Okay. And electricity, do you remember when electricity came to East Mims?
All of those things came about, one after the other, not during those times, but it's been quite a while ago. And as I said, long before that, we didn't have any of those things. Candles or lamps, that's what we used for lights.
And what did you do to keep cool in the summertime?
With the door open and wind blowing through, or a fan, fanning yourself, because we didn't even have the electrical fans, but we didn't have no electricity. So we had to take care of it the best way we could. Sit out on the porch, sit out in the yard, people would sit around the trees. Mm-hmm.
But then again, that type of lifestyle led to being very neighborly
Right.
and communication within the community.
Right.
Correct?
Every neighbor looked out for the other neighbors. Mm-hmm.
And so there was quite a sense of companionship and community spirit.
And love for each other.
Love for each
That's
other.
right.
Let me ask you this: do you remember when in the early days that the churches got together here in Mims and held picnics and socials, ice cream socials?
I don't know about the socials and picnics, but we used to have revivals because people would come. I was converted in one of the yards of Miss Hattie Johnson that I told you about before. They'd have these in the evenings. They'd have these all these chairs and sitting around, or benches, and this is where the people would come and preach out there. We didn't have to go to the church. People, all the community would settle in that area and preach to you there.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
and where was where was one of the more popular places here in Mims, location-wise?
What now is not right down the street from me, Maple Fields, but it was all woods all around there. But behind their house, because that's where I was, Miss Hattie had these chairs and benches out there, and they would come out there, and that's down Harry T. Moore now, not far from my house.
The north end of Harry T.
Right.
Oh.
Not all the way, but yeah, the north end.
Okay.
And this would happen at a lot of the neighbors' homes.
Oh, how wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
That was wonderful. The Masonic Lodge that's on Main Street, do you remember anything when that got started, or some of the people that belong to the Masonic Lodge here?
I remember, but I don't remember the dates. My husband was a Mason, and I joined forgot what the women's department was called now, but we had that also in that building that's there on Main, and we would have our meetings. But the men would have their meetings at a certain time, and the women would have theirs. But yes, we had that here. I think it's trying to get active again, but that was years and years ago.
Okay. Do you remember when the school was there in the interim, when they were building the new school here at Kyler? I was told that they used the hall, it was referred to as the hall, and they used that as a school for a short period of time. Do you remember anything about that or hearing about that?
I know they used it for a school for a short time, but I don't remember much about it.
Do you remember about when that was?
No, because this building here, when it was built, I went to school here at the front part of this, but it wasn't as nice as it is now. It was an old building, but that's where I went to school.
At the Kyler Center?
Yes, up here.
Up in front?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Do you remember the school out on the Warren estate at all?
No, I heard my sister talk about that. She's deceased now, but she went down there. That's I was one I'm next to. But I remember her talking about having to walk down there to school. But this one was here, and this is where I came, was here.
Okay. You also had mentioned before about baptisms in the river in Salt Lake. I wanted to ask you, what period of time was this when they used to baptize at Salt Lake? Why did they go out to Salt Lake?
We didn't have pools in the churches like we have now. And the only place we could baptize would be at some other open place. So I was baptized at Salt Lake. There were some of the others were baptized at Indian River. But we didn't have no indoor place for baptism. It's like at my church at Greater St. James now, we just baptize right there in the pool. And then have a baptism, they run the water in there. We didn't have that then.
Yeah, I was interested in, was it just on the main bank at Salt Lake that this took place?
This where I was baptized is when you go down there, there'd always be a place you could walk down to the water. And the deacons or somebody would go out and check it and see that you know where to go. And that's how we were able to carry you into that area.
I see.
So I don't know the exact area, but it's near the bridge, but where they had where we would walk down.
Okay. What do you think the younger generations today should know about the early days in Mims and the hardships that people went through to pave the way for what they have to enjoy today? I know some of them don't think they have too much, but relatively speaking, it's come a long way. What are some of the things that you would like them to feel appreciation for?
Well, one thing I would like for them to, number one, it has to be the parents, because the parents are not interested in themselves and knowing what's happened. And somebody have to have that interest to share it with the children. But to know that, you know, the old people like Mr. and Mrs. Moore, Jameson, and all of those people. I was the first person Jameson met as a woman when she came here to teach. Those years I was subbing in her room, that she was going to take over. But our children need to know these kind of things, but usually we are not sharing them with them. And it's so many things that they think that what they see now has been here all the time, but it hasn't. We've come through some hard times because had a lot of Ku Klux Klansmen who would, you know, come into the area or whatever. It's a lot of things that we've been through that we don't even discuss with our children, because I don't discuss it a lot of time myself.
Where did the Ku Klux Klan was active here in the 1930s, 1940s, would you say?
I think it was about that time, because the times that I'd seen them, really saw them, was going down the road to Titusville, and up a little hill from where the old hospital used to be. It was a little hilly place there, and that's when I would see them.
Do you know where they came from?
We thought, I heard from my mothers and those, that they came from Scottsmore. A lot of them were in the Scottsmore area. So I don't know just, you know, where in that area, but this is what I'd hear them discussing.
Do you remember any? Where did you teach school?
Right here at the College Center for a little while. I was just subbing there.
Okay. Do you remember the school books that you used when you were a teacher, and what time are we talking about when you taught there? Was it in the 50s or?
It was probably in the late 40s, because my baby was a little girl. She wasn't old enough to go to school then, but Miss Jameson told me to let her stay. But she was born in '39. Okay. So I was doing the substitute teaching until they got a teacher. Mr. Moore was you know, instrumental in having me to come out and do some work, and he's the cause of my going back to school.
Okay. Do you remember what was a typical day of teaching? Were classes held, like what time of the day did you start, and what time of the day did classes end?
I don't remember, but I think we'd start about 8 o'clock, and I don't know how long we'd go. I don't remember the exact times.
Okay.
Because Miss Josie's aunt, Miss Sims, and Miss Ella Warren, who is another cousin of hers also, they were the ones who were responsible for the, you know, seeing what and giving us what we had to do.
Okay. Did the students enjoy going to school back then? Did they realize that it was important to them getting their education, or how did the students differ then than they do today? Could you tell us something about
the parents were involved. They might not have come out, but they saw to it that the children did what they had to do. And back then, children could be punished with a paddle. So I mean, they knew that if I say I'm gonna tell your mother, they knew what was gonna happen. So, but it's not relevant now. But those kind of things, the teachers could talk with the parents, and the children had to respond.
So actually, the parents gave the teachers authority to correct the child while they were in school.
And they would do it again when they got home.
They got it when they got home. And I think a lesson should be learned from that experience back then, that we need to get back to the basics and continue that today.
That's why we are so far off, and so many of our children, so much is happening.
Yes. We had talked about the churches being involved in educating the youth about the history of the area, and also about the history of the people, the congregation that make up the community, what the contributors were, and about the people in general. What do you feel that the churches may be able to do so that the youth will know what was done prior to today, and about the pioneering spirit of the community, the history?
I think the history should be shared with the children, but the pastors of most of the churches now come from in between what happened, and therefore they aren't too interested now either, because some of them support don't spanking the children, you see, or don't punishing the child, and the parents don't seem to have the input or the appreciation for what went on back then, because that's the ones who have the children now were not the ones coming with my time. There's just a very few of us left, so they don't care. They don't care what went on back then, and to see that the children can get what's better for them now, and that's making it real hard.
And I think the other equation to that is that there are other social issues that they have to deal with in society today, that possibly the history of the area, or the roots, so to speak, is a low priority.
That's so true.
However, do you feel that maybe within the church communities that the elders could take the responsibility upon themselves to help educate the children by doing projects like this?
I think they could, but for the most elders, we don't have that. We don't feel up to that burden, because I know, as I say, I've had a lot of experience with that. But even with the pastors, you can hardly get in to talk with them and let them understand, because they didn't come from that way back. We don't have very few old pastors now. Pastors are young, and they're doing it their way. So I mean, there's so much that's missing. Just like when I said in the other ones, we used to have what was called BYPU and BTU, where we could train the children. And of course, everything that was needed in the church, the children received that training, and they were able to use it, to exercise it, so that when they were called on, they were ready. And you find very few of those now.
And I think in the modern generation too, that the correlation between the elders and the youth has segmented, and they, like I said, they have other issues that they're dealing with today, and they really don't have an attitude at this present time that they really don't care. Hoping that the Moore Center will be a repository, so when they are ready, we will leave them something so they can learn.
I certainly hope so.
Well, thank you very much for talking with us today.
Okay.